alone and terrified. This cub is just 6 weeks old. Close by, mother lays helpless. Stunned by a tranquilizer. Scientists attempt to rescue. It looks cruel. Truth is, it's meant to save the polar bear as a species. What these scientists are finding is that polar bears are losing weight year after year. They're slowly starving to death. The chief culprit: global warming. Right across the Arctic, global warming is casting an ominous shadow. The greenhouse effect, created by the mass burning of fossil fuels, has meant surface air temperatures in the Arctic have risen up to 4 degrees over the past 50 years. As a result, the Greenland ice cap, the world's second largest ice cap, is melting at an unprecedented rate. Every year, there's 9% less sea ice than the year before. Polar bears need that ice to hunt their favourite meal: seals. Less ice means less time to hunt. Less time to eat.
And the research that we have, the information we have, it doesn't look a good story for polar bears.
Polar bears worldwide need to have a certain amount of body fat in order to reproduce. They can survive with less, but if they're trying to reproduce, they need more body fat. So as the polar bears become leaner and leaner, reproduction is going to become poorer and poorer.
Life on the ice has always been tough for the polar bears. While they have adapted superbly to these conditions, these days they're finding it tougher and tougher to get around. Not only is there less ice, but what's left is getting harder and harder to cross. Satellite imagery shows the reality of the bear's disappearing hunting ground. The sea ice in summer has been shrinking to the point it covers 20% less than it did 3 decades ago. And there's every sign the ice will continue to disappear.
Climate modelers are now telling us that the sea ice may disappear entirely in the next 50 to 100 years. And if that happens, that means that polar bears would have to retrace 80,000 or more years of evolutionary history in 50 to 100 years, and that just doesn't seem very likely.
Ahead, we investigate the plight of the polar bear. Bears so hungry, they're on the prowl for human food. Residents so worried they're on guard for starving bears. And scientists so concerned they're tranquilising hundreds of bears every year for research.
We know for sure that the population here in Western Hudson Bay is certainly having negative impacts from climate change.
We're now going to look at the wear on the canines.
We'll make alarming discoveries. Bears shot as they charged at tourists.
Very well consumed. It's
Bears
not a big bear.
that haven't survived.
It's been handled before.
And we'll join rangers as they scare off menacing bears. Witness the confrontation between famished bears and huskies. And watch a family of bears evacuated from an Arctic town. The future of the ice bear, as we're about to discover, is literally on thin ice. These ice bears are ever such magnificent creatures. In size, they stand so tall, the biggest of them almost twice as large as me, and their heads are this wide. Size of individuals may be that big, but the size of the world's population of polar bears is in fact shrinking. 22,000 of them now estimated across the Arctic. Here in Hudson Bay, the population is shrinking, down from 1,200 back in the late 80s to only 950. In the wild, the ice bear is a formidable creature. The world's largest land carnivore. A powerful hunter. A natural-born killer. Ring seals their favourite meal. Yet, with its hunting ground disappearing, it's looking for new sources of food. These huskies look like an easy target. But the dogs put up a vigorous fight. This is an isolated Norwegian weather station at Hopen Island, deep in the Arctic. Come night, the bears will try again. And again. The polar bear remains determined. The dogs defiant. It's now late summer on Hudson Bay. For the past 5 months, with no sea ice to hunt seals, the bears have been marking time, waiting for the sea ice to form again. It's this time of year that the bears are in a playful mode. They'll rise to their hind legs to spar, repeatedly charging one another. But their numbers are well down this year.
We've got only 35 bears inside 200 miles of coastline. In past years, the count averages right around 95 to 140 bears. So quite a drop here, and everybody's asking, where have all the bears gone?
Stuart Webber has been studying the bears at this remote coastal lodge of Nanook for the past 9 years.
We're located here at 137 miles from Gillam, Manitoba by air. 4-wheelers and an open trailer brings you down to the level of the bear. Everybody wants to come and see the polar bear. This time of the year, they're hungry. They've been fasting for a while now.
I've never had any bear come after you, but ones that person's got to watch for is the sow and the cubs. On account of she's only trying to protect her babies, like any mother will do.
They'll dig back into the sand, and as you dig down in, you can see that the sand is wet. On the hot days, they'll dig down into the beachhead here, because they don't want to exert themselves in any way. They're just going to conserve as much energy as they can.
The Cree used to live up and down this coastline here, travel back and forth, live off the land mainly on the moose, the caribou, we got the birds, we have the geese, we have wolverines, the wolf, the foxes, like the red fox. Of course, we have the Arctic fox.
There is a bear around that we've kind of nicknamed Monster Huge Bear, and he's a big guy. He pulled the flag down and chewed on it. This was something I told the girls wouldn't last 2 weeks, but it lasted almost a month until he got a hold of it. I don't know how high up that would have been, but pulled the tails off of it. The fence is 8 feet right here, at least. The 2 flags that got pulled down earlier, they're all chewed up. A US flag and a Canadian flag.
The bear numbers may be way down this year, but those that remain are still very curious. Remember, this is the only animal on Earth to actively hunt humans.
We're almost like we're the attraction at the zoo here inside the fence. The bears are coming to view us instead of us going to view them. It might be the only place in the world that you can do that with polar bears.
As long as he just eats pie, we're okay. I was beside the sign, and all of a sudden, he was after me, and Stuart pulled me away.
In the waters of Hudson Bay, the bears get to swim with another fascinating creature. Beluga whales congregate on the eastern shore of Hudson Bay over summer, some 3,500 of them. And while it's common to see bears and whales swimming in the same waters, they normally keep apart. It's a different matter when a baby beluga whale dies and washes ashore. This bear has not eaten anything substantial for an entire season. The whale represents a feast. Ravenous bears are not what the authorities in Churchill approve of. They'll do whatever it takes to discourage the bears.
We have a bear line set up in the community. 3 of us on call at all times during the active bear season.
A special patrol, Polar Bear Alert, is headed by Sean Bobier.
We'll respond and try and move the bear away from the area.
90 Churchill, there's a bear down at Cape Mary by the shore.
Roger, thanks. We administer the Polar Bear Alert program. Bear's always a threat, so we'd like to remove them from the area. Polar Bear Alert program is developed to protect human life, property, and as well protect the bears. This season started early. We started having bears around mid-July, but it will carry through till freeze up. Where the last chunk of ice came close to shore happened to be close to the town of Churchill, so the bears got off the ice close to Churchill. Probably about a 2 or 3 year old bear looking for something to eat. Last year, the last sheet of ice went out 80 to 100 miles away from the community, so we had a relatively quiet season with not very many bears around. So we're going to try and move them along the coastline to chase them across the river with the cracker shells. We get a variety of bears that come in and cause problems. The younger bears that are just been removed from their mothers are obviously more curious and they're looking for something to eat, so only if it's an ongoing problem then the bears can be darted. We'd put a green dot between their shoulders to let hunters in the north know that that bear's had drug in it. They shouldn't eat it, their meat might have some residue in it.
Up in the air, another team flies out to survey the Hudson Bay bears every year. The World Wildlife Fund sponsors this project, with Canadian scientist Nick Lunn and team planning to tranquillise and measure 8 bears this day.
The Hudson Bay polar bear population is the one that's the most studied, part of a Canadian commitment to signing an international agreement on the conservation of polar bears back in 1973.
I think we got it down. Okay, Roger, I'll get
This is the population that Canada started looking at and have continued ever since.
How does he look at it?
It looks like a large adult male.
Okay.
I'll load up the dart here.
You got to determine the bear's body weight, and based on the body weight, that's how you determine how much drug to give.
I'll sit in the back here, Ring. You're ready?
You're ready, that's good. See the bear moving off at our 2 o'clock there, so.
All right, looks
there
good.
Yeah, okay, coming around into wind.
Into wind. A little left. All right.
Here we go, slide down.
All right, got him.
Got it, okay, awesome. Just gonna turn and I'll slide in here to the bear's left.
Looks like he's heading towards that pond.
Okay, I'll come around. Okay, there we go. We got him turned down. He'll move around to the back. I'll move away. This time it'll get around.
Is he staggering at all?
Okay, there's his first stagger. Okay, oh, that looks good. Okay, looks like he's starting to sit. I'll slide out now.
Well done.
Okay, awesome. Is this the guy that was in the water, do you know, that we saw? Or looks like an adult male. He's got a little bit of head movement. Hey, bear! Up. The head is the very last thing to go down. Hey!
I'm just removing the dart. The dart has a small barb on it, so it stays in the bear. Otherwise, they wouldn't get all the drug. One of the side effects of the drugs is they get sort of thirsty. If you're catching them in the snow, they'll start eating snow and licking their lips and stuff, and that's just one of the indications that he is actually drugged.
You should always just look around. There are lots of rocks out there and there are bears moving around, so you should always just keep your eye open.
There's a tattoo, X.
We caught the bear before. It'll have a tattoo in its lip and or tags in its ears. This bear was first caught in 1999 as a lone yearling just down the coast. This is a bear that we've caught pretty much every year since 1999, all in this area. We don't often find bears that we've never caught before. So Wayne, this bear is 8 years old. I'll just get a temperature on him now. 36.7 at 11:16. That's a good temperature. He's not overheated at all. One of the things the drugs do is lowers the breathing rate of the bear. If it gets too low and the bear gets hot, then he has a difficulty getting rid of excess heat. 18 breaths a minute. He's fine for us to continue doing our work on. We're now going to take some standard measurements. We're measuring the skull width at its widest part. 258.
5.8.
Yeah. The skull length is 403.
403.
I'm now going to look at the wear on the canines. All 4 canines are all a 1 out of 3. There's little or no wear, and these are in really good shape. But the overall other tooth wear is also a 1. Another sign that this bear is a young bear. As bears, especially males, get older, canines get broken in fights and these sorts of infection that gets in. Another thing we look at is overall scarring pattern. Again, out of 1 to 3, with 1 being light or no scars, and 3 being a heavily scarred bear. He's a 1 out of 3. He's probably not at the stage yet that he's gotten into many, if any, fights, females out on the sea ice. He doesn't have any fresh cuts, so that's a 1 as well. We also take what we call our fat index. You just sort of feel along the spine and whether or not there's any fat on the bear. If we were to score a bear 1, 1 would be basically a bag of bones, no fat on him at all. In the early 80s, we certainly got lots of females that were sort of a 4 and 5 out of 5 now. They're sort of more 3s and 4s out of 5s. They're not in the same shape as they were 25 years ago. This guy's in really good shape. He's got lots of nice fat on him. If we catch a bear that might be scored as a 2 or a 1 this time of the year, that we wonder how they're going to make it through given that they still have 2.5 months to go.
Starting to move his head a little bit now. He's been down for about 40-45 minutes, and one of the first things you see when the bear starts recovering from the drug is movement in the head. It'll take 2 to 3 hours before he's really starting to shake off all the drug, but you can see he's sort of resisting to open up his mouth. Those are all good signs that he's well on his way to recovery.
We're just about done with this bear.
Observing the tranquilizing operation is WWF official Tonya Folkestad.
This is the first time I see a polar bear, and certainly the first time I touch one. WWF is first of all supporting the research here in Hudson Bay because it's the best studied population in the world, and it's also the first population that is showing that it's being impacted by climate change. There is less sea ice in the Arctic Ocean now than ever recorded before, and it's been like that for a few years. The sea ice is on a long-term declining trend. At the moment, the polar bears are on a path to extinction, and that's a path we have made for them.
While measuring this bear,
Did you guys see this?
Nick Lunn makes a disturbing discovery.
Very well consumed. It's not a big bear. This is the first that I've seen. You find every now and then pieces of old polar bear bones, like leg bone or something, but I can't say that I've come across a carcass here. One of the premolars is gone. There's a good chance it's been handled before. The ability to find tattoos or anything.
What of the ear tag?
Oh, he's got an ear tag. Last year we found a bear that starved to death. It's possible that's the same for this one. He's got an ear tag, so with a bit of luck, we can find out who this bear was. 17287. We'll go back and check him out. We can come back here. This guy's not going anywhere. That bear's been partially consumed. Would almost certainly have been by other bears. There's not a lot else out here. There are Arctic wolves, but it's hard to know. 17287. Okay, this male bear was born in the year 2000, so it would have been 6 years old this year. And it's had a lot of handling in and around the town of Churchill. In 2001, it was at Churchill Motel. In 2003, it was at Pizza Hut. It was at the Marine Tank Farm across from the big grain elevators in 2004. And in 2005, it was in the flats just outside of town. So this bear had a long history of being in and around the town of Churchill. 6 years old, and he's a bear no more.
Polar bears evolved to exploit the sea ice habitat, so all the polar bears are dependent on having sea ice as their primary habitat. When you look at sort of the various climate change and sea ice prediction models, it paints a very bleak picture 50 to 100 years down the road. Polar bears are a sea ice animal. That's where they get their food. They hunt seals out on the sea ice. If there isn't sea ice, there won't be polar bears.
From high summer to the depths of winter. It takes just 8 weeks for this transformation. The Arctic winter has arrived with a vengeance. But it's a winter that is slowly getting shorter.
The reality of climate change here on Hudson Bay is that the sea ice is breaking up 1 week earlier every decade. 1 week less time, the polar bears have to go out and hunt their favourite food, ring seals. 1 week less feeding means they're slowly starving to death.
On the western shores of Canada's Hudson Bay, the polar bears are gathering. Waiting for the sea ice to form so they can once again hunt seals. It's been 5 months since they last ate properly. Understandably, they're starving. Hungry enough to risk their life to reach food. Sharp nails on the top of a garbage truck have not deterred one hungry bear.
If the bear jumps out right away, they're going to have to start blasting right away. Hey, Jay? Just stay away. When he's in that mess, I haven't got a shot.
I can't tell.
I can't tell how the hell he got in there either.
The biggest hole is like this big.
I know, and it's a big bear. Well, during the course of the night, a polar bear has broken into our garbage truck. We've got a number of deterrents on it, but he still managed to find a way to get in there. Got a number of people coming out today to view polar bears, but we want to just manage the situation so we have control of that one for the moment. We had it happen last week, and we reinforced our garbage truck. We put a number of nails on, the Churchill welcome mat, as they say. But obviously this bear has found ulterior ways to get involved. Morning, Daryl. It's in there.
What?
It's in the garbage truck.
What's in the garbage truck?
Yeah, I opened the door in the shed to throw some garbage in this morning, and I had a very nice wake-up call. I wonder if he went in the backside and slipped through up off the barrels on the back or something.
Maybe, but he's jumping around in there.
Oh, I know. We're here to see polar bears in the wild. We certainly don't want anything to happen to this polar bear that's negative, but we've got to manage the situation as best we can at this point. Okay, when we start up the engine, my only concern is however he got in, he might bolt.
What we'll do is roll the vehicles back, and then we'll have guys on both sides.
Okay.
So we can make sure he's going that way.
Yep, that'll work. Go, go, go!
I can't see a thing. So
Yeah, go that way, you're clear.
Beautiful. So it should work every time.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
This drama has all taken place at the launch site for these giant vehicles. They're known as tundra buggies, purpose-built vehicles used to take tourists and scientists out along the coastline to see the polar bears in the wild. One of the scientists we're travelling with today is Steve Amstrup, polar bear project leader for the Alaska Science Centre.
Polar bears are fantastic. Large, white carnivores living in a really what appears to us to be a bleak environment, and just trying to get a handle on how they survive out there is pretty fantastic. I mean, you go out of the sea ice and it looks like a moonscape. There's no obvious evidence of life out there, and yet suddenly, wow, there's a real wild polar bear. And they're making a living out there. It's pretty spectacular. Here we've got a couple of subadult male polar bears that have been wrestling around the lodge here for several days. And actually they've been called the Scrappy Twins. They're a classic set of subadult male polar bears. They're probably in the 600-pound category. And they seem to have a lot of extra energy. They rest like this one is doing here now for part of the day, and then they'll go at it for bouts of 20 minutes, a half hour, doing some pretty serious wrestling. You come out here on the shores of Hudson Bay and you see a lot of polar bears, and most of them look pretty good. But those are not the animals that are most affected. It's the very young, which we haven't seen very many of around here, and the very old. And the middle-aged animals, the prime-age animals, are still doing pretty well. One of the things that's most impressive about them is how they catch seals. Out here in the sea ice, they'll be sort of meandering back and forth along the snow, and suddenly, boom, they head right towards the seal lair and smash into it with their paws, and lo and behold, they pull a seal out from underneath the snow. In the last 25 years or so, we've lost over 500,000 square miles of sea ice in the polar basin in the summertime. Polar bears are dependent on that sea ice for just about all of their life cycle needs. Not only do they have less ice to hunt on, and they've got ice for shorter periods of time to hunt on, but they've also got longer distances between the shore and the pack ice, and poor substrate for denning on the sea ice. In recent analysis of the data that we've seen from northern Alaska, what we've seen is that females are producing cubs at a fairly high rate, but the cubs aren't surviving. And that's sort of the classic first thing that you'd see in a large mammal. They'll continue to try and reproduce, but if the cubs aren't adequately nourished, and if the cubs aren't of adequate weight, then they don't survive as well. And what we've seen in northern Alaska in the last 15 years or so is a major shift to poorer and poorer survival of cubs of the year during their first 6 months or so of life. If sea ice disappears entirely, it seems unlikely that polar bears could survive. Polar bears can't move back into a terrestrial environment because the terrestrial environments are already full of grizzly bears that would be effective competitors, and because the terrestrial environments aren't rich enough to support the large body mass of a large number of polar bears. So it's likely that if sea ice really did disappear entirely, that we would indeed lose polar bears as a species.
As the average weight of polar bears slowly comes down, so too does the size of their litters. Mothers with 3 cubs were once common, but these days litters are down to 2 or even 1 cub. These cubs were born around last Christmas. They're now 10 months old, and along with mother, they're slowly working their way along the coastline of Western Hudson Bay. What they're about to encounter is the township of Churchill, built right on their migration route.
We have mom and cubs in the waste transfer station. Someone had left a door open to the garbage bin where they hold all the waste for the town. She got in there with her cubs. One of the town employees went in there with a truck and chased her out. And now she's in the kind of tundra area below the holding facility. So we're going to go out there and move them off away from the area, chase them towards a small bush there. Hopefully they won't return, and we'll go from there. They've been hanging around there for about a week. So we just finished like 3 weeks. We didn't have a bear call, and then we've had maybe 15 this week. In the last week or so, I had probably 6 or so maybe.
They've come too close to humans. Ranger Sean Bobia will attempt to frighten them away. Sean believes he's moved them on.
It's that time of year. I mean, they're scavenging for food wherever they can get it, just prior to the ice making up. So hopefully this will be enough of a deterrent to keep them away.
But one of the cubs is very hungry. Within minutes of Ranger Sean's departure, this cub leads its mother and sibling back to the smell of food.
The danger is just it's an area frequented by people. I mean, everyone's hauling their garbage away, so it's not a safe place to have them.
This family is clearly starving. They'd normally be well out on the ice and hunting seals by now. But the ice has yet to form. They're experiencing global warming firsthand. They've now reached the waste treatment facility and their hunger is audible. For the best part of an hour, they try to break in.
We're on our way to the recycling facility again. One of our trucks was over there and saw that mother and cubs just back up by the buildings. So if we can move them off and keep them safe without putting them in the holding facility, and would be great. So we'll try and move them off, and if they come back, we will likely immobilize them.
On the other side of Churchill, more bears are threatening residents.
Polar bear alert.
Hello, you guys aware there's a bear coming ashore at Johnsville right now?
No, we're not, but thanks very much for the call.
Okay, take care.
There's a bear coming off the sea ice by the sounds of things. That trap is down. Might have shaken the trap. We're just going to see if there's anything in it. If not, then we're just going to move this bear back off. A cub in the trap, with a mother hanging around waiting for its cub to come out. Got a cub inside there. I think Jack, the boys are gonna dart the mum. And it takes two guys. You need to have a guy with a gun just in case. I got her. They're just going to check and see if another bear's in the vicinity. We'll chase it off.
It's just right here, about 100 feet over top of the rock in front of me here.
Okay, sounds good. She down? Oh yeah. Oh, another call. Hello, polar bear alert.
Hi, I'd just like to report that there's a bear out on the ice over here by the hospital. It's getting closer and closer.
Okay, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
I got another bear. I gotta go now. They're not that far offshore, and so we get a lot of sightings. He's coming this way along this edge. So we'll try to turn him around. And he's kind of making his way along the coastline that way, so if we can get him either going out a little further or back that way is what we're looking to do. There he is.
All of this is taking place as Churchill's youngsters celebrate Halloween. A cordon of bear watchers is stationed right around the town.
We were posted here around 4:30 and we'll be here till 9. Well, myself, representing Manitoba Conservation, and a group of volunteers, the RCMP and the ambulance, were posted at different spots throughout the town of Churchill.
Happy Halloween!
Thank you.
Assisting in watching for polar bears.
Still at large and moving closer to town this night are the mother and cubs last spotted at the waste treatment facility.
Just making it safe for the children to trick or treat, being that it's Halloween.
Usually there's a lot of snow. I can remember years ago, like when the kids were smaller, we used to have them bundled right up in their snowsuits, and you're trudging through snow like this deep. But it's over the years, it's really changed a lot. And it's just getting warmer and warmer every year. It shouldn't be like this. It should be snowing out there.
Out there, the mother and cubs are still searching for food, ever so close to those Halloween celebrations.
They're no problem. Conservation does a good job keeping them away. You get in the way of one, then you're polar bear meat. Hey, Jasmine.
Hello.
All right, say happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Happy Halloween.
Tonight, thankfully, there are no bear attacks. But first thing next morning, the mother and cubs will have to be tranquilised.
One of our crew trucks was out there and happened upon her and darted her and her cubs, so we're going to go give them a hand to lift them and haul them up.
Get the dart out of her?
The drug we use is telazol. It's just an immobilization drug. The bear is still fully conscious. They know what's going on. Their eyes are open. They're unable to move their muscles. The first thing they lose power over is their back legs. Front legs will go down next once the head movement stops and go in and handle them. We mobilize the mother first, and the cubs will always stick with the mother. So once the mother goes down, they just basically stay.
You get up here to help us pull that guy.
It takes 5 strong men to haul the mother out on a sled. Even then, it's an effort to stand upright. The mother weighs some 300 kilograms, and dragging her across freshly formed snow is a major effort.
Decided to dart them because they keep coming back for the recycling facility. They've had a taste of the garbage that's inside, so there's no way to move them off.
The tranquilizer will immobilise this mother for several hours, more than enough time for the Polar Bear Alert team to safely move her out of town. Once the tranquilised mother has been moved to the truck, it's time to collect her 2 cubs. Weighing in at only 40 kilograms, each cub can be lifted by one man. Hauling the 2 of them out is much lighter and easier work than hauling their mother. With climate change robbing this family of hunting seals earlier, there's a real urgency today to get the bears away from town.
The plan is to release them directly back onto the ice and hopefully they stay out there and go hunting seals, and so where they belong.
It is one of the most scenically magnificent places on the planet. The island group of Svalbard, midway between Europe and the North Pole. This is also one of the world's major denning areas for polar bears. Some 3,000 of them live here. A population, as we're about to witness, that is under serious threat from global warming.
Global warming is affecting the bears because it takes away the most important habitat the bears have, which is the sea ice. Obviously, if the sea ice are gone, then they are really struggling.
Watching those changes are the people of Longyearbyen, the only township in this isolated wilderness. They're well aware of the dangers that polar bears pose.
Norway is quite liberal with guns. The police encourage people to be armed. The question is, what's most dangerous? Polar bears or unqualified people with guns? And that's difficult to answer.
We had a bear last week, which was shot, very old, very thin polar bear.
More than 20 years old. It had no blubber whatsoever left, which indicates it hasn't been eating for a long time.
Starving bears are more dangerous than many other bears because they're more desperate.
On average, we shoot 3 bears a year. This is a young female bear who came to the local city dump and would not be chased away. So that, unfortunately, the police had to shoot her. Because in a town like Longyearbyen, now we're close to 2,000 people. There's children, we can't have bears around town. We try to chase them if we can. We use helicopters, snowmobiles, boats, whatever, to get them out of town. If that doesn't work, they're shot. Since 1971, 4 people have been killed and another 6 or 7 injured by bears. One of the people killed was a young girl, and she was killed on the mountain just outside of town here. She was out for a walk and she met a bear and wasn't paying much attention, and the bear killed her.
Polar bears are protected in Svalbard, but that hasn't stopped local shops selling bear skins collected by Inuit hunters in neighbouring Greenland. Studying polar bears in the wild is becoming increasingly popular. Aurora expeditions are taking this icebreaker, the Polar Pioneer, into waters north of Svalbard.
I really wanted to see polar bears in the wild, something you couldn't do for too much longer, so I wanted to come now while I still could.
We carry rifles, flare pistols, and we have pen flares. They're bear scaring devices. As the expedition leader, the safety of passengers is my primary concern when it comes to polar bear safety. It's an issue we have to take very seriously. If we see a bear and we feel it's safe to go ashore, we do so. It's not so much the bear we can see we worry about, it's more the one we can't see. So when we're on shore, we have people walking on the perimeters of the group. If one of you starts wandering off, you will be the easy prey.
We want to at least know in advance when there are bears on shore, and so we spend a lot of time on the bridge, which is an elevated platform to view shore with.
Looks like we have our first polar bear spotted. About 2 o'clock off the ship, it's quite a distance away.
Then polar bears get shorter seasons where they can hunt, so more bears will be stranded on land, and they get shorter periods to accumulate fat, which is important for them.
I can't guesstimate how long it will take before polar bears disappear from the Arctic. Current knowledge says that at the end of this century we will have very little sea ice left. There will still be winter ice in the Arctic, but the summer ice is almost gone.
And he came right towards us, which was a thrill. And he just kept moving right along the foreshore, steadily doing his little dog paddle.
He was quite curious as we motored along
Parallel to the beach, so he did the same. After a couple of 100 yards, he got fed up and went back on land.
Apart from polar bears, global warming is affecting other wildlife, such as walruses and seals, both food sources for the bears. Kayak commander Al Backer is able to get in very close to them.
The kayaking brings you a little closer. You have small, more intimate groups. With a Zodiac, if you get blown close to a seal, you have to get the engine started up and move away. So you're limited to a distance there. When you're paddling, you can approach just by drifting within several meters of the seals without moving. The seals weren't perturbed, and that's a contact that's rare, and it's a nice feeling.
Bearded seal, very long whiskers, and when they dry, they curl up at the tips. It's really quite neat.
We had just come into anchor and going into the Zodiacs to have a look at some walrus that we had spotted from the bridge. Just as we're approaching the beach, a big bear came walking along towards the walrus.
He's big.
He's very huge.
With your naked eye.
We got a bit excited about that, thought we were going to see an interesting encounter between bear and walrus.
Right up close to them.
Walrus certainly can fend for themselves. A bear might take a small walrus if it was on its own, certainly, but the bear get a nasty injury from the walrus tusks.
There's not a lot of food on shore. They rarely will get a reindeer unless the reindeer's sick, so there's no big food source for them. And so they get pretty hungry.
The bear just sort of walked around, had a sniff and ended up going past them and lay down.
Walruses may appear harmless, but human fatalities are not uncommon.
There's been numerous walrus attacks in Norway. They're timid and they're curious. It's a bad combination. We give them a wide space in the water.
As serene as the Arctic landscape appears in midsummer, group leaders remain vigilant.
Polar bears are dangerous. They're opportunistic, they're hungry because once the pack ice drifts north, they don't have any real food and they prefer seals, but essentially they get hungry the longer the summer goes on.
For the eco-tourists on board the Polar Pioneer, sighting a mother bear and cubs is a very significant experience.
Came round the bend and there was a mother with her 2 cubs. And the mother started running with her cubs down the shoreline.
They can run as fast as a horse for a short distance before they overheat.
We'd been told that sometimes when the male bears get hungry, they'll try to take a cub, and we could see that the mother was looking very worried. And we then saw them eating some seaweed. I don't think bears normally eat seaweed.
It's a marine animal. Wandering around the land here, scavenging for birds' eggs and whatever else. That's not their natural environment. Their environment is out at sea on the ice. Hunting, taking seals. They can't do that. So it really is a hard time for them.
Behind us we have the Lillehammer Glacier. It's about 10-12 kilometers across. Worrying things about the glacier is that we took measurements last year, and looking at it now, it receded almost a kilometer at places. It happens with a lot of the glaciers up here in Spitsbergen, and unfortunately we see that in the years we've been here that they're disappearing very quickly.
Right across the Arctic, the ice is melting at an unprecedented rate, leaving the polar bears on very thin ice.
I want to see them survive and prosper and grow in population. And I'm very afraid of the effect of global warming. To me, that's a tragedy for mankind.
Unless polar bears are saved in the wild, the only places they may still be seen alive are in zoos and aquariums.
The future's probably bleak if you look at a lot of the research that's being done. We're seeing the population in Western Hudson Bay down 16% over the last couple of decades. It was very pleasing to see that they're going to thinking of changing the classification of these bears. You know, we've got 5 nations which are looking after these bears, but however some of those nations still hunt these bears. It's not the right message. Climate change is a difficult issue. There's an argument amongst science in regard to climate change. What we've got to be careful about with the bear situation is that we don't get so tied up with the issue of climate change that we forget about the bears. Places like SeaWorld and zoos all over the world, they may be the last places you see polar bears at all. And zoos have a very, very important role. A, they've got to create that awareness, they've got to create that empathy and that caring for these animals. If they do, then people are more apt to want to look after the environment more. The other role for zoos is with the captain breeding. We've got to ensure that the places we've got for polar bears, which isn't a lot, are places for the most genetically valuable animals. They do adapt very, very well. Well, they've adapted from the brown bear, not all that long ago. So yes, they do adapt. What we have here, this water behind me is 16 degrees. If I take that down to 14 degrees, these bears won't go in the water. They've almost become Gold Coast bears. And if you look at their coats are very, very thick. They're very good. They go through their molts exactly as they do in the wild. So they do adapt. But the situation is, will there be the food for them if they adapt? It's all about that other food chain. Will they displace animals in that adaptation? And the research that we have, the information we have, it doesn't look a good story for polar bears.
Many scientists worldwide are saying that the sea ice is decreasing at a rate that might cause it to disappear entirely in the next 50 to 100 years. If that were to be the case, it's highly likely that we would also lose polar bears.
The polar bear that you see over here is really the canary in the mine shaft, and ultimately, as it faces its demise, is a major warning sign for mankind that they're probably next.
The behavior of our generation, and maybe one more, can precondition the sustainability of the Earth for 100 generations, because once you start melting those ice sheets, there are points of no return.